Our next episode is one of my favorites of the entire series, Episode 4, entitled Magnetic Menace. Chiro and Sparks are on patrol when Sparks finds a magnetic anomaly, him basically being a giant magnet and all. Chiro wants to head home right away though, because...
What? You have a hot date? Me? No, I just...
Urgent reminder for Chiro. Weekly episodic television serial, The Sunriders, will begin in 5 minutes.
Sparks checks it himself, letting Chiro enjoy his show, further establishing how early in the series Sparks becomes a really key relationship for Chiro. When Sparks finds the anomaly, his ship goes dead and his magnetic hands freak out on him as we head to commercial. When we come back, Chiro's enjoying his show, called The Sunriders. I'll get into these guys in a second, but first things first. Sparks is missing, and the moment Chiro finds out about this, he immediately drops everything, seeing how he seems to be mentally blaming himself for it. The team try to reach Sparks with no luck, although they do see what is jamming his signal is coming from a place filled with space junk. The team try to fly there, but without Sparks, they're too unstable, so they crash into the place. Otto, being the mechanic that he is, gets excited about what is around him. Knowing people who love to build things, scrapyards is a gold mine to them, as one man's trash is another man's treasure, so you can see why Otto is so happy. Oh, and also one line that technically is a throwaway, but I want to focus in on.
Ugh, this place makes my fur itch.
If the monkeys are robots, why would they have fur? Well, to spoil it here would be mean, so instead let's focus on the fact of our heroes being spied upon and falling into some sort of trap. They battle very well. By the way, laser scalpel is another thing Gibson's weapon is capable of, but I seem to be wrong about everyone else only being able to do one thing. Besides being very scratchy, we see twice in this episode that Antari can stretch his arms to great lengths as well, and that Otto can create tornadoes with his saws. Which doesn't make much sense to me, but whatever. Without Sparks, they have holes in their defenses and seem outmatched, until the strange being comes to their rescue.
Reset and reboot. This is no way to welcome visitors to the realm. My deepest apologies.
Lord Scrapperton 2.8 is apparently in charge of the Mecha Realm and apologizes for his defenses attacking the team. He also is a big collector. Scrapperton has not seen Sparks, but says he has some scanners to try and find him. The team distrusts him, so Chiro decides to distract Scrapperton while the rest of the team try to find Sparks. It's at this point two interesting points come to play, one major, one minor. The big one being learning Scrapperton's origins while Chiro and him chat.
I would never have dreamed of a place like this when I was human.
You were human?
Yes! Sparing the gruesome details, one day I found myself severely lacking in the leg department.
That's awful.
Nonsense! It was the beginning of my grand upgrade. Tick-tock, tick-tock.
Apparently, Scrapperton gave himself a mechanical leg one day, probably for medical reasons, and decided to do both of his legs as he felt it was an upgrade to himself. And from there, he did his whole body, replacing skin and muscle with paint and metal, giving us the man we see today. Meanwhile, the team find where Sparks is, as Antari asks Nova to break down the door.
I'll give it to Scrapperton. He knows how to build stuff, but I can break anything.
That fire command of her does seem like just another anime expression that is used throughout the show, but learning what we learn about Nova much later in the show, you may want to keep this scene in your back pocket. Chiro finds Sparks' fist rocket as Scrapperton admits to lying. Meanwhile, the team finds Sparks a wee bit distraught.
He took my hands! My beautiful hands! He gave me these! I think these are his hands!
Wow. Can you crack your knuckles? Ooh. I made you a yo-yo.
The team gets reunited again, but we see that Scrapperton has plans for Sparks' hands. He knocks out the team and takes the rest of the monkeys' hands, Sparks being the only one with replacements and feeling a bit better about his situation. The team come together to use the Power Primate to bust themselves out of the cell they were in, as we learn that Scrapperton plans on using Sparks' magnets as an amplifier to collect the city of Sugarzoom. Here we get two very different duels. The monkeys having to fight without their hands, and the very awesome sequence between Chiro and Scrapperton, who is now in control of all the monkeys' powers.
blaze. Yeah! You are a clever boy.
Chiro handles himself well for a while, but finds himself in peril until Sparks uses the yo-yo made for him to take Scrapperton's staff and hurl it into the magnetic machine. Scrapperton then basically becomes a head as his machine is destroyed, allowing the monkeys to get their hands back. This also turns the gravity off, forcing Scrapperton's collection to float into space, which seems to drive Scrapperton mad.
Oh, my collection!
Your collection is history, Scrapperton. Let's go!
Don't touch me! I'm starting a new collection. Yes, TikTok.
It's interesting that despite the fight that took place and the fact that the place is about to blow, Chiro still tries to help Scrapperton. The team escapes in Sparks' rocket as we learn that all scans show no life or mechs. Basically that Scrapperton is no more. Or so we think. Pay close attention, kiddies, because I missed this detail the first time I watched the show. That staff we saw earlier that Scrapperton calls Cocksmith, stupid name, is actually Skeleton King's staff. This leads me to assume something very interesting. See, Scrapperton seemed content in just building his scrap collection for the rest of his life, it seems. But apparently Scrappy found Cocksmith, and when he used it on himself, it gave him some great ideas, according to him. This I actually believe warped him into the maniacal man we see in this episode. This episode is great, with some very interesting development, great battle scenes, and a lot of great visual humor with Sparks' hands. It also shows just how essential every member of the team is when one is missing. It shows that things just don't feel right.
Super! Robot! Team Hyper! Go!
Nobody said monkey.
From this point on, the creators, writers, and directors of the show seem to have hit their groove. Every episode in the rest of the series is interesting and has top-notch storytelling. But before we move on to episode 5, there is one thing I skipped over you might want to learn for the next episode. See, the Sunriders is Chiro's favorite show, the one he ditched Sparks for in the beginning of the episode. He geeks out when he learns that Scrapperton has the full action figure set as well. Chiro is still a kid here, so him worshipping fictitious heroes isn't shocking. Although it is fun to note that both the Sunriders and Chiro have a white and orange color theme. Almost like he wants to be a fourth Sunrider. Food for thought as I leave you until the next episode.
If Sparks were here, he'd want to go rescue, himself.